You're listening to Procurement 6, the weekly podcast from the team at Art of Procurement that summarizes this week in procurement in just 6 short segments.
Hi there, I'm Philip Eitzen, and today is Friday, August 25th, 2023.
6.
Today's tip of the week comes from my own personal experience returning home from the UK a couple of weeks ago. So on arriving at the airport, my family and I found that our British Airways flight was cancelled. And you know, this just happens, especially at the moment. But the problems began when the response from the check-in staff was basically, they can't help me because we don't work for British Airways. So, in other words, BA had outsourced this function to a third party and not really provided them with any ability to resolve customer problems. This, as you can imagine, led to a number of issues, and probably most damaging for BA was related to their reputation, both for me and all of the other 200 plus who were on the cancelled flight that day. They actually later offered to fly us home a full 5 days later. But the tip here, however, is that when you outsource, just ensure that you're giving enough ability, enough power to the staff of the outsourced company to be able to protect you against reputational damage, as your outsourced partner is now the representative of your brand.
5.
In this week's podcast, we heard from Chandel Shorter, the Senior Consultant of Change Management, and Joe Payne, SVP of Source to Pay, both at CoreCentric, about how procurement can address common challenges to change management, like attitudes of resistance or lack of buy-in at the executive level, and how they can set themselves up for a successful change management program. We actually put together a number of the tips into a blog post called An Expert's Guide to Procurement Change Management. And tip number 8 on that list was to evaluate your own attitude towards change. So some people will say, I just don't like change, without really understanding where that discomfort comes from. If you can identify with this attitude, Chandel recommends writing down all the questions that you have that helps you analyze the root of those negative feelings and hopefully help you move past them. So questions like, is it because am I nervous about it? Am I in the middle and I just need more information? Or do I really feel informed enough, or do I just have to ask a couple more questions? The most important thing is to be honest with yourself and why you do or you don't like change. And then within that awareness, you can begin to find your own self-empowerment and tools to help you navigate the change curve with less anxiety. Most procurement leaders deal with change in some form or another on a weekly or even daily basis. And procurement's role in the change management process is pivotal. By approaching change management as a formal discipline that requires a very specific set of skills and tactics, procurement can be the rising tide that lifts all boats and leads to business successfully through the change that we all know is inevitable.
4.
All companies and procurement organizations for that matter have a customer experience. Investing in frictionless processes, digital technology, and value delivery is critical. But before any of that happens, it's essential to get to know the customer better, to understand what they want and what they need. In this week's episode of the Sourcing Hero podcast, host Kelly Banner welcomed Jay Detling. Jay is the CEO of Hero Digital, a customer experience company. His background's in building and growing companies by bringing transformation and partnerships to the forefront. Jay talks in the podcast about the importance of customer experience to a company's customer acquisition and retention. Again, thinking about this in the context of customers of procurement. What it means when he talks about the fast-growing practice area of customer experience management. How can we better understand the human needs of our customers? Ways that a customer experience can contribute or detract from a company's competitive differentiators, and his advice for organizations that want to understand the customer experience they are currently offering and find ways to improve it.
This is Procurement 6 from Art of Procurement. To get notified every time an episode is published, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe. 3.
In this week's Dial P for Procurement, Kelly dug into the multiple factors leading to the recent bankruptcy of Yellow Freight. Although a mountain of debt, accusations of fraudulent billing from the Department of Defense and a combative labor union played significant roles, so did the company's failure to leverage their procurement team after 2 major acquisitions, Roadway and USF. Yellow's value proposition was based upon their ability to provide absolute low-cost service, which is a perfectly fine model if you're highly efficient and cost-effective, but it's not particularly tolerant of redundancies in the system. Yellow may have acquired Roadway and USF, but they never truly integrated them into their operation. Instead, they allowed their companies to operate independently, creating significant overlap and added costs into their networks over time. They may have been able to preserve the company names from a branding or a market segmentation standpoint, but there was no room for additional overhead. Now, as a procurement professional, we all see kind of what the challenges are with that. Procurement delivers many forms of value, but eliminating non-value added costs is really what we do best. It would not necessarily have been easy work given the scope and scale of the operations to be combined, but Yellow's team could have followed a pretty standard playbook of post-acquisition consolidation and streamlining. Just think about all the duplication across people, equipment, services, and facilities. Consider all of that under-leveraged demand. Given the similarity of the three companies, there would certainly have been potential economies of scale everywhere had Yellow fully leveraged the total volumes from their Yellow, USF, and Roadway brands.
2.
This week, I recorded an interview to publish shortly with two of the authors of the 2023 Deloitte CPO survey report. And as always, it's a pretty fascinating read. One of the themes of the report was how procurement teams can actually do more with less, something that we're all faced with, and it shared 10 different ways that the leading procurement teams are actually achieving this. These fall into 4 broad different areas. First, standardizing processes and policies and systems and data, and using flexible automation tools. Next, creating purposeful and thoughtful teams that are focused on efficiently and effectively executing common tasks in shared services or centers. Really using a mix of internal and external help. That's all about doing the basics right. Next was using outside intelligence in the form of expertise, data, and reports to help inform the highest priority opportunities to target, and then formally planning and coordinating all efforts on prioritizing focused transformation initiatives. You can download the full report with a link that's in the show notes of today's episode.
1.
Join us for our next live digital event on November 7th, which is Mastermind Live. As you know, we're on a mission here at Art of Procurement to 10x the impact of procurement. We're not looking for continuous incremental improvements here. Procurement's been delivering on those for years. Instead, we're looking at where we can lead a step change, introduce new perspectives, and embrace a completely transformed approach to measuring procurement's impact. None of us should expect this mission is easy. It's going to take all of us combining our greatest strengths, deepest experiences, and competitive spirit to see it through. At Mastermind Live 2023, we're going to explore a number of different topics that help us on that journey from a variety of different perspectives to really see what it takes to make the vision of a 10x procurement become reality. Join us by just signing up. You can register now at artofprocurement.com/calendar.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday at 6 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you've enjoyed this pod, help us grow and tell your peers to search for Procurement 6 wherever they get their podcasts.